They no-showed this game, you guys. They wanted nothing to do with this. You can see all of these, and just damn, I'm gonna get into this one too. Take a look at this. You look at all these empty seats just right here. I mean, it's empty seats. It is empty seats everywhere, guys. Everywhere. Look at how empty it is in here, man. All these seats is open. You got some fans down there. Look at this. All these empty seats. Just seats everywhere. Seats everywhere.
On May 20th, 2026, the Indiana Fever hosted the Portland Fire at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. Roughly 100 minutes before tip-off, Caitlin Clark was scratched from the lineup. The team had cleared her to play following a positive injury report, only to upgrade her status to questionable at the last moment, and the announcement came without her having appeared on the injury report earlier in the week. Head coach Stephanie White later explained that Clark had woken up with stiffness and soreness, and that the training staff decided it was not the time to take a chance. Asked if there was any longer-term concern, White's answer was less than definitive. She said there wasn't, or that she didn't know. The building told its own story. Gainbridge Fieldhouse has a capacity of nearly 18,000, and Fever home games have typically sold out that capacity throughout the Clark era. The reported attendance for the Portland game was just over 14,000. That gap of roughly 4,000 empty seats became the story of the night before the opening tip ever happened. Footage from inside the arena showing wide swaths of unfilled sections spread quickly online. Fans in attendance described it as the emptiest the building had looked since Clark's arrival in Indiana. The pattern is not new and it is not subtle. Before Clark was drafted, the Fever had one of the lowest average home attendances in the WNBA, drawing barely over 4,000 fans a game in 2023. Her arrival changed that almost overnight, with the team selling out 16 of 20 home games in 2024 and drawing a full house of over 17,000 in most of them. The Fever became the league's biggest road draw as well, averaging roughly 4,000 more fans per game than any other team, a gap large enough that opposing franchises started moving Fever games to bigger arenas just to meet demand. The math is not complicated. When the one player driving that demand is not on the floor, a measurable share of the audience does not show up. The Portland game was simply the clearest recent illustration of that math playing out in real time. What makes the night harder to explain away is what happened after the ball went up. Indiana beat Portland 90-73. Aaliyah Boston finished with 24 points and 8 rebounds, and Kelsey Mitchell added 21. Guard Tyasha Harris, starting in Clark's place, played a season-high 29 minutes, handed out a game-high 7 assists, and did not turn the ball over once. Lexi Hull matched Boston's 8 rebounds. By any conventional, it was a comfortable, well-executed win. The team on the floor performed. The team in the stands, on the other hand, had already made its decision before the game started. That contradiction, a competent, winning roster playing in front of a visibly diminished crowd, has fed a recurring media argument that predates this particular game. During Clark's second season, one national analyst argued on air that Indiana was actually more dangerous when Clark wasn't playing, pointing to Kelsey Mitchell, Ari McDonald, and Aaliyah Boston as evidence that the roster had enough weapons to function without a single ball-dominant guard controlling the offense. The reaction from Fever fans was immediate and largely hostile. Clips of the comment circulated for days, with fans and other media figures pushing back that anyone making that argument didn't understand what Clark provides to the team beyond a box score. The theory resurfaces every time Indiana wins comfortably without her, and it resurfaced again after this game, for the same reason it always does. A win without the star of the franchise is treated as evidence against the star, rather than evidence of a deep roster doing its job for one night. Underneath both storylines, the empty seats and the team is fine without her argument, sits a more specific and more consistent frustration from the fan base, and it centers on Stephanie White. A significant portion of that fan base believes White does not build the offense around Clark the way a franchise with a generational talent should. That sentiment is not confined to one bad night. It is built across a season in which Clark has dealt with injuries in each of the last 2 years, and every absence renews the question of whether the coaching staff's rotations and offensive structure protect her workload or simply route around her. The broader officiating conversation happening across the league this season adds another layer to that frustration, and it is worth separating from the Clark-specific storyline because it affects every team, not just Indiana. The WNBA spent the offseason building a task force specifically to address years of complaints about inconsistent whistles and unchecked physicality. The early results of that response have been dramatic and not entirely in the direction fans wanted. Personal fouls per game jumped from an average of 32.4 in the 2025 regular season to 41.8 through the first month of 2026, with teams combining for 7.5 more free throw attempts per game than the year before. Through the first 11 games of the season alone, teams were averaging 22.3 fouls and 23.1 free throws per game, compared to 17.5 fouls and 18.2 free throws the previous year, with 5 games already seeing a team attempt at least 25 free throws, a total that took the entire 2025 season to reach. Coaches have not stayed quiet about it. One head coach said directly that the task force had discussed eliminating unnecessary physicality, not calling marginal fouls, and questioned why the league seemed to be doing the latter. Another coach criticized the officiating even more forcefully after a game against Dallas, questioning how her stars could have drawn fewer fouls than the opposing team did, and told the league to fine her for saying so if it wanted. Even Stephanie White acknowledged that the league had essentially told officials to call everything, after years of complaints about missed contact going the other way. One star player described a whistle-heavy game, which stretched close to 3 hours, as having no flow at all. The complaints have not been limited to volume, consistency, or the perceived lack of it remains the sharper complaint among fans. A recent officiating decision against Angel Reese during a loss to the Mystics drew heavy criticism online, with fans arguing she had been to the free throw line only once while absorbing repeated contact in the paint, and accusing the league of applying a different standard to her physical style of play than it applies to other post players. The broader complaint from players, coaches, and fans alike has not been about wanting a softer game. It has been about wanting the same game called the same way from possession to possession. A similar argument was made the previous postseason when a coach called the level of contact allowed on a play that injured a star player a form of malpractice, and that player said afterward the league had dismissed player concerns about the link between inconsistent officiating and injury risk. That history matters here because it reframes what happened in Indiana on May 20th as one data point inside a much larger pattern rather than an isolated incident. Fans are not just reacting to one empty building or one absent star. They are reacting to a full season's worth of signals. Attendance that rises and falls with a single player's health, a coaching staff whose rotations are questioned every time that player sits, a media apparatus quick to argue the team doesn't need her, and a league-wide officiating system that has swung from too loose to, by several coaches' own admission, possibly too tight, without yet finding a version fans trust to be consistent from night to night. None of these threads resolves cleanly. The league has stated it is exploring additional accountability measures for officiating, including a system that would require public explanation of contested calls in close games. Whether that satisfies fans who feel the sport has become a whistle-driven product, or coaches who feel the pendulum swung too far from letting players play, remains an open question. The league has framed the current stretch as a calibration period, arguing that officials and teams are both adjusting to a standard that is stricter than what came before. Calibration periods, by definition, do not offer certainty in the moment they are happening. What is certain is the arithmetic from that Wednesday night in Indianapolis. A team with legitimate depth beat an expansion opponent by 17 points. Its best available players performed at a high level individually, and roughly 4,000 ticket holders who would normally have been in their seats decided, once they learned the franchise's most marketable player would not be on the floor, that the game was not worth attending. That decision was not about the quality of basketball on display. It was about who wasn't there to play it. The rest of the season will determine whether that gap closes as Clark's health stabilizes, or whether it becomes the new baseline for a fan base that is made clear, night after night, exactly whose presence it is actually paying to see. 10 days later, the two teams met again, this time in Portland. Clark played this time, but the outcome inverted almost every storyline from the first meeting. The Fire beat the Fever 100-84, with Megan Gustafson leading Portland with 22 points, and Clark held to just 6 points on the night. Whatever confidence the earlier blowout win had generated when Clark was out, the roster did not carry that form into a game with her on the floor and struggling. Boston still found ways to contribute, assisting on a Clark basket at one point in the fourth quarter, but the result was lopsided in the other direction, with Portland leading by as many as 26 points. Taken together, the two games against the same expansion opponent within the same 10-day stretch produced two directly contradictory results depending on whether Clark played, and neither result settled the underlying argument. A win without her fueled the theory that the team doesn't need her. A loss with her playing poorly fueled the opposite argument, that her presence alone doesn't guarantee results if the supporting cast and officiating environment aren't working in her favor. Fans looking for a clean narrative from either game were left without one. The attendance economics extend beyond single games. Heading into the 2026 season, teams had moved noticeably fewer games against Indiana to larger arenas than they had the year before, just 4 such relocations compared to 9 in 2025. League insiders tied the drop directly to uncertainty around Clark's health after an injury-shortened second season, since arenas that upsize for a Fever visit are betting on a healthy Clark actually taking the floor. That bet had not looked safe for most of the previous year. Clark had said publicly during a USA basketball training camp in December that she considered herself fully healthy heading into the new season, and league observers treated that as a signal that more of those bigger venue moves could return if she stayed on the court. Portland's scratch, arriving less than 2 months into the season, was exactly the kind of incident that keeps other franchises cautious about betting arena capacity on her availability. The frustration with physicality and inconsistent officiating has not been limited to whistles inside games. Sophie Cunningham was fined 3 separate times within a span of a couple of months this season simply for publicly questioning officiating decisions, a detail that fans have pointed to directly when arguing that the league policies players' complaints more aggressively than it policies the calls themselves. That dynamic feeds the same accountability question running through nearly every thread of this season. Fans, players, and coaches are being asked to trust a system that fines people for criticizing it, while still working out its own calibration in real time. Whether that trust arrives before the postseason, or whether the same complaints resurface in October the way they did last October, is the question hanging over the rest of the year.